Question: how is capitalism compatible with your definition of good if it requires ever-increasing uses of the finite resources of the planet, where once depleted would mean our end? Well, I would say capitalism isn't compatible with my definition of good if it requires ever-increasing uses of the finite resources of the planet. But that's by no means self-evident, even though the scuttlebutt, let's say, especially among the environmentalist-oriented types, whom I have some sympathy for, by the way, especially with regards to ocean depletion. There's a huge argument, and there has been for many, many years, between the economists and the biologists, and this is a really important thing to know. And the economists point out that human ingenuity is such that we're continually able to make more with less, and certainly over the last, 500 years, that especially in the last 150 years, that's just absolutely evident. Like people say we're going to run out of energy, and I think that's absolutely preposterous. It's like it's as crazy as thinking we're going to run out of matter. I mean, we're going through a bit of a bottleneck right now because the population is going to increase to about 9 billion, and then it's going to decrease. That's the most reliable projections, and 9 billion isn't a lot more than we have now, and there's going to be some environmental disruption as a consequence of that. But I don't think there's any reason to assume at all that capitalism necessarily requires ever-increasing uses of the finite resources of the planet. It's also not obvious to what degree the resources of the planet are actually finite, because we continually think up new uses for things that nobody thought had any use at all. And so it depends to some degree on whether or not you're willing to bet on human imaginativeness, or you're going to be a Malthusian pessimist. And I'm not saying that there aren't reasons for both. I'm just saying that it is by no means self-evident that things are getting worse. I can give you an example. So, in the last 15 years, the Millennium Goal for the UN was to have world poverty, like absolute poverty, so that's less than $1.50 a day, by 50% within 15 years, and that was actually reached ahead of schedule. And we've lifted hundreds of millions of people into the middle class over the last 30 years, and so there is an increasing inequality in the West because the working class has taken the brunt of that redistribution to third world countries. But by the same token, there's no starvation in the world anymore, except really for reasons of misdistribution and political purpose. And people are becoming richer and more educated all the time. And and we are waking up to our planetary responsibilities. Once people stop starving to death and having to burn like dirt and eat substandard food that they've scraped out of the ground, they do start to turn their attention to things that might be more aesthetic. And so, look, I don't think there's